Well, before starting, I would like to wish everybody a very good afternoon to this academic ceremony, in which I'd like to open officially this academic ceremony, in which Mr. Marco Chavez Alfaro will defend his academic thesis entitled Dietary Strategies for Cardiometabolic Health, Effects of Collagen, Hydrolysate, and Nuts in Overweight and Obese Adults. May I invite you, Mr. Candidate, to present a summary of your study and the conclusion of your thesis in the next 15 minutes. I give you the word.
Thank you very much, Prorector, members of the Position Committee, supervisors, friends, colleagues, and family. Today, I'm going to present the results of my thesis called Dietary Strategies for Cardiometabolic Health, Effects of Collagen Hydrolysates and Nuts in Overweight and Obese Adults. To start with, overweight and obesity has an alarming prevalence worldwide of 43%. These conditions are associated with increased or elevated fasting and postprandial glucose concentrations, that in turn increases the risk of developing type 2 diabetes and cardiovascular disease. This last one takes approximately 21 million lives every year. Therefore, lifestyle modifications are necessary to prevent cardiovascular diseases. Among these, adopting healthy dietary patterns are necessary. And for that, or to support that, clinical studies are needed to evaluate the effects of food and supplements on human health. For example, reactive peptides, or also protein hydrolysates, have been receiving a lot of attention in the last years due to the possible mechanism to improve human health. These peptides usually have 2 or more biological targets. These are first extracted from protein sources to then undergo an hydrolysation process that will break up the proteins in very small pieces of protein called peptides or amino acids. And the supplementation of these can increase or reach higher peak levels in plasma and appear more rapidly compared to the whole protein source. One of these peptides are from collagen hydrolysates. These can be extracted from marine and animal sources. And the tripeptide, glycine, proline, hydroxyproline, has been associated with improvement of glucose metabolism. This tripeptide is very rich in collagen hydrolysate, especially in the porcine-derived collagen hydrolysate. However, the impact of the supplementation on this in glucose metabolism has not been proved in human studies. Other peptides have been associated with improvements in cardiovascular risk markers. Because of that, we conducted a study to evaluate the effect of 10 grams of porcine collagen hydrolysate in cardiometabolic health. For that, we recruited 56 participants with overweight or obesity between 40 and 75 years old. The participants had to consume or were first randomized either to the 10 grams of collagen hydrolysate or a placebo. But they have to be in a 2-round period before that consuming a placebo. They have to consume all the placebo and the collagen hydrolysate 15 minutes before breakfast or the first meal. They were also instructed not to modify physical activity patterns or dietary behavior. In Chapter 2, we showed the results of continuous glucose monitor metrics. For that, the participants used for around 5 days a continuous glucose monitor, in which we extracted the data from the last 3 measurement days, considering a measurement date from midnight to midnight. But because glucose concentration and glucose fluctuations are more relevant, or at least more marked during daytime, we were more interested during this period. The participants also underwent to a mixed meal tolerance test, where they drank a milkshake rich in carbohydrates and fat to evaluate postprandial glucose, insulin, and triglycerol concentrations. The same parameters were also measured in fasting conditions. So, after 4 weeks of collagen hydrolysate consumption, had not impact in glucose concentration that was our primary outcome. Also did not affect other parameters, but it did have a significant, very small variations in glucose fluctuations. And the same, it was significant, but very small increase in fasting concentrations of insulin. In Chapter 3, we presented the results of the office blood pressure, 24 hours blood pressure, and blood pressure fluctuations. We also took photos of the funded eye to evaluate the structures of the small blood vessels, that the changes in these can give us an early indication for cardiovascular disease in the future. We also took markers of blood vessel dysfunction and inflammation, as well as cholesterol concentration in blood. But after the 4 weeks intervention, these parameters were not significantly affected. As these parameters, when they are modified, they can also have an impact in cognitive function. For that, the participants also took a cognitive test called CANTAF to evaluate different cognitive domains. But unexpectedly, the collagen hydrolysate increased the movement time, but with very small changes too. In conclusion, 10 grams of porcine derived collagen hydrolysate did not improve blood glucose concentration nor other cardiovascular health markers in overweight or obese adults. Glucose fluctuation or elevated glucose fluctuation has been also linked to the higher risk of cardiovascular diseases, especially in adults with diabetes. And the glucose fluctuation has been associated with elevated concentration of fructosamine. That is a marker for longer-term glucose control. In other words, this marker indicates how well the glucose concentration were from the last 2 or 3 weeks. But this has not been investigated in people without diabetes. Because of that, we gathered the data from 4 different studies where they were overweight or obese with not diabetes. They use in all the studies a continuous glucose monitor as well. And the same that the collagen hydrolysate, we collected the data from the last 3 measurement days. In total, 107 participants with overweight or obesity and without diabetes were included in the analysis. From 13 continuous glucose metrics evaluated, only M value was significantly associated with fructosamine concentration. This M value will reflect how far our glucose levels were from a reference value. And the association showed that for 1 increase of M value, it was associated with an increase of 3 micromoles per liter of fructosamine. However, taking in consideration the mean value of the M value for all the participants and also the healthy ranges, we can conclude that these results or these findings might lack of clinical relevance. Nut consumption has been associated with improvement in cardiovascular outcomes due to their unsaturated fat composition, minerals, fiber, and phytosterol. Among these benefits, it has been proved that they can modulate blood lipid concentrations and also peripheral vascular function. Almonds, compared to other nuts, they are richer in vitamin E, fiber, potassium, protein, magnesium, and they can confer a different unsaturated fatty acid composition that can be beneficial for vascular function. However, the impact of almonds in vascular function has not been evaluated in a population with prediabetes. That prediabetes is a condition between, and also a reversible condition between normal glycemia, or people without diabetes, and diabetes. For that, this study design was a crossover design, meaning that each participant underwent an intervention period and a control period, with a washout period in between to raise any possible effect during the interventions. The participants were instructed to consume the 50 grams of almonds any time of the day to mimic the Dutch dietary recommendation. So they consumed for 5 months these almonds, and for the control period, they didn't have to consume it. For the whole study, they didn't have to consume other kind of almonds or food products that contains nuts. We included 34 participants between 40 and 75 years with overweight or obesity and with prediabetes. Also, they have to follow the Dutch dietary guidelines as much as they could. In this case, we also measured arterial stiffness. For that, we measure how fast the pulse travels from the carotid to the femoral arterioles, meaning that when the pulse travels faster, it might indicate or will indicate stiffness, while on the other hand, when the pulse travels slower, will indicate a soft artery. And the other parameters, I already mentioned it in the previous study. So 50 grams of almond consumption during 5 months showed no effects or no significant effects in arterial stiffness and markers of blood vessel dysfunction and inflammation. It did have a minimal increase the width of the small veins, and it did reduce systolic blood pressure and systolic blood pressure variability. In conclusion, 50 grams of almonds led to positive changes in 24 hours blood pressure and its fluctuation in people with overweight, obesity, and prediabetes. Previously reported for my colleague, Dr. Nascent, and in a study where the participants consumed 60 grams of mixed nuts with walnuts, pistachios, cashew, and hazelnut, showed beneficial effects in lowered blood cholesterol. It showed no effects in high-density lipoprotein cholesterol, HDL, or also known as the good cholesterol, and triglycerol. But it did reduce total cholesterol and LDL cholesterol, also known as the bad cholesterol. That can be translated to beneficial effect on cardiovascular health. However, we wanted to see if these changes can also be observed in the composition and the size of the lipoproteins. For that, a nuclear magnetic resonance spectrometry was used as a method. Similar to the almond study, this was a crossover design, where the participants had to consume 60 grams of mixed nuts and similarly were instructed to consume it any time of the day. In total, 28 participants finalized the study between 60 and 70 years old with overweight or obesity. Similarly, they have to follow the Dutch dietary guidelines as much as they could. This new result showed that the consumption of 60 grams of mixed nut lowered total cholesterol, having no significant impact in HDL cholesterol or good cholesterol, but it had an impact in all the cholesterol that was not from the HDL cholesterol. This cholesterol that can increase cardiovascular risk. Also, the molecule ApoB that is in every single molecule or lipoprotein that can increase cardiovascular risk also was significantly decreased. In this case, we observe a significant decrease of triglycerol. There was not effect in the size of these lipoproteins, but we did observe reductions of, in concentrations of all sizes for FLDL cholesterol, and only for the two largest sizes for the LDL. The cholesterol concentrations were reduced in all the sizes for the VLDL cholesterol as well, and also only for the two largest sizes for the LDL cholesterol. The fat was reduced in all the lipoproteins, including the HDL or the good cholesterol. In conclusion, these can be the beneficial changes that can reduce the development of some cardiovascular diseases. To conclude, porcine collagen hydrolysate showed no beneficial effects on cardiometabolic risk markers on cognitive function in adults with overweight or obesity. Continuous glucose metrics, we observed that M values was positively associated with fructosamine concentration in non-diabetes. However, without limited clinical relevance, limited clinical relevance, long-term almond consumption lowered 24-hour systolic blood pressure and its fluctuation in pre-diabetic adults, and long-term mixed nut consumption improved fat, cholesterol profiles, and cholesterol composition, potentially supporting cardiovascular health in adults with overweight or obesity. Thank you very much. So I give the word to the prorector.
Thank you, Mr. Candidate, for your excellent presentation, which is in line with what we like to have at our university. So very good. Before we proceed, I would like to mention 4 names. First of all, my own name is Professor Steinbusch. I'm the pro-rector, and I'm officially assisted today by Professor Salverberg as my secretary. But of course, more importantly, is your promotion team, who sit opposite of me for the audience. And I would like to mention here Professor Mensing and Professor Plot, who guided you since 2020, and that reached the point that you are here today. For the audience today, we have 5 members in the Corona, of which are 4 on site, and 1 member is online, and you will see him later appear on the big screen. So without further ado, I would like to start, and I would like to give first the word to Professor Hesseling. Professor Hesseling was the chair of your assessment committee, and he is professor of physical activity and metabolic health, and I'd like to give him the first word.
Thank you, Mr. Prorector. Dear candidate, it's my pleasure to kick off this defense, and I'd like to congratulate you with the thesis, which is comprising a series of well-performed, well-executed studies that have been well-written. I think that was the general consensus of the reading committee. And I think also this is the place to congratulate your supervisory team. You started in early COVID times, I think, and that is not the easiest time to start a PhD position, particularly not if it's human interventions. And I'd like to I'd like to ask a few questions on these human interventions, and primarily my focus will be on chapter 2, where you use the porcine collagen hydrolysate and examine its, I think in chapter 2, predominantly effects on glucose metabolism. And if I see these kind of intervention studies, I always like to think, okay, why did they choose this particular compound? And for here, I was intrigued by the fact that you say, okay, this compound might activate the DPP-4, or it might have effects on DPP-4, inhibition actually, and might have effects on blood pressure via ACE inhibition. Similar mechanisms that are targeted by pharmaceutical stuff. So that to me made it attractive, and also maybe for you a bit more complicated in the sense that there's then a lot of things to ask on the mechanisms. So I noticed that in your introduction you wrote that there's various sources of the collagen hydrolysates, and you choose for pork. Why did you choose pork other than marine or, for example, chicken hydrolysates that you also showed?
Highly esteemed opponent, thank you very much for the compliments and the question. Yeah, as I also discussed in the introduction and also in the paper, apparently this tripeptide has a higher effect in DPP4, but not only DPP4, but I'm going to talk a little bit later. So the content of this tripeptide has been shown to be higher in the percent collagen hydrolysate. There are several in vitro studies that have shown a higher inhibition of the DPP4 with this supplement. However, in this year, in 2025, there was also an experiment in this particular collagen hydrolysate. So, because as I mentioned also during the manuscript, it has to be taken in consideration the process of hydrolysation to have a better tripeptides or dipeptides composition at the end as an end product. So in this recent study, what they first did, and I think it was the way to do it before we did this research, because it was even for the same company, probably the same product, they first did different hydrolysation process. And they proved it, in this case, not for the inhibition of DPP4, but for the stimulation of GLP-1 as well. Because apparently this protein hydrolysase can have several mechanisms, from the inhibiting the glucose absorption, inhibiting some enzymes to degrade this not the peptide, sorry, the disaccharide or so on. So in this case, what they started is to find a good hydrolysation. And they at least started with the in vitro study to see what was the one that activated the most the GLP-1, having several processes simulating first the absorption of the gastrointestinal path before going to the hepatocyte. So after that, they proved it also in animal study, and then they continue with the human study. But it was not, it's called a proof of concept study. It was not practically the clinical study.
So maybe just to proceed with that, so they identified a certain particular hydrolysate that they thought was effective. You seem to have used an hydrolysate that was not giving you the results that you were hoping for. So then several things could have happened. How did you check adherence to consumption of this particular compound?
That is one of the limitations that we have, because we couldn't measure it anymore in blood, because it has a lifetime in the blood of 6 hours approximately.
But that you knew beforehand, basically, because you already showed that it is one of the benefits was that it was very rapidly disappearing in the blood.
That's true. I was about to say that we could do it from urine, but also we didn't take the urine sample. So it was a mistake that we can learn from that for later we can also include it to really measure in blood this compliance, because we only measure it through the digest consumption.
Have you considered measuring the downstream effects that were not in your primary outcomes, but maybe something that could give an idea of adherence to the medication?
The problem, for example, the GLP-1, it has the lifespan also very limited of 1 to 2 minutes. Probably also the DPP4 has probably the same short life that we cannot see it from the different days in between, or like more than several hours. So yeah, sadly we couldn't measure another type of compliance.
Okay, so we assume that the compound you gave was taken by the people, was actually passing through the stomach and released into the blood.
Yes.
Good. Then you still don't seem to find the effects that you were hoping for.
No.
In fact, maybe the opposite. You saw increases in insulin, you saw some increases in glucose that were not particularly beneficial. How could you explain that?
It was very tough to explain it. I think that I went through a lot of papers to at least see one paper with similar results that I couldn't find. So I was thinking in possible mechanisms. I was reading a lot in literature about it, but in this case it was not possible for us to explain why we saw that. In this case, also, as you can see, for example, the insulin, it was a median increase of 1.0. So also, we cannot call this clinical relevant in this case. Also, for the glycemic variability, we also saw significant results in the increase in the collagen hydrolysate that was also unexpected.
Okay,
but
I buy that. But suppose the same order of magnitude of effects would have been reversed. You saw a 1 millimolar decrease in glucose.
This is also that we have to say it. For example, I can give you an example that a study that I read. It was also in almonds when I was writing the paper. They have in the FMD, the group that took the FMD has a FMD of 3.0 and then increased to 7.5. Like 3.5 was very low. Like it was like if they had even probably in already cardiovascular disease, while the other group was 7.7 and 7.7, and then obviously was significant. And they say like it could translate it to an improvement or reduce the risk of 30%. Also, I saw it reflected in several web pages. So that's why we have to.
The point that I'm trying to make here is. You see an increase of 1 millimolar that is statistically significant, but you say it might not be clinically relevant.
I would have to say.
But if you would have found the reverse, a decrease, then you would probably say, okay, this is good. And in this case, you could have said, oh, we need to extend maybe, or maybe give higher levels off. But in the end, when you need to give a dietary advice or a supplementary advice, would you advise taking collagen or maybe even say stay away from it?
That is a good question. So first, for the first question, I would do also the same. I would say like, okay, we found this, it was positive, but it's not clinically relevant probably. We will say like, okay, consider it just for later, because at the end, research is repetition and probably replicate the results. And then we're going to have meta-analysis to have a better conclusion. The other question, can you repeat it quickly?
The dietary advice to the public. You did the collagen study. I don't see the benefits. I even fear a little side effects maybe, or so what would you say?
Referring this new study, they showed that consuming like 30 minutes before 10 or 5 grams of collagen hydrolysate in a mixed meal tolerant test reduce glucose concentration. So there may be that still the effect is there. But I would say that I won't recommend it completely in the sense that you have to take it, because we don't know if this effect is still just for the insulinotropic activity of the protein intake that any protein intake can have, or is because of the collagen hydrolysate. So also we need to see or to compare it with other protein sources to say, okay, this collagen is better than other proteins, because other ones have also shown beneficial effects in that.
I thank you for the answer, and I give the word back to the pro-rector.
Thank you very much. Then the opposition will be continued by Professor Brouwer. She is Professor of Nutrition for Healthy Living from the Free University in Amsterdam, and I'd like to thank her that she joins us live today here in Maastricht. Thank you.
Thank you, Pro-Rector, and thank you for inviting me to be able to discuss this nice thesis with you. And of course, I would like to congratulate you with the work. I especially like the intervention studies, and I would also like to extend my congratulations to your supervisors. I read the content, but I also like the outside, and I think you mixed your cultural backgrounds in the back, is that right?
With the church here in Maastricht, yes.
Yes. Thank you. Very nice. But of course, I'm not here just to give some compliments, but above all to have a discussion on the content of the thesis. And I would like to start discussing the food frequency questionnaire that you used in chapter 2 and 3. On page 32, you say a validated food frequency questionnaire was completed at the end of both the run-in period and the intervention period. But it doesn't specify anything about the food frequency questionnaire. So, except that it's validated, I always tell my students that's quite a nonsensical remark, because what does it mean? So what kind of food frequency questionnaire did you use? What was the period that it asked for, and what was it validated for?
Yeah, so this, well, first of all, highly esteemed opponent. Thank you very much for the words and the compliments. So we use a food frequency questionnaire that will capture like 4 weeks of food consumption of this participant. So okay. Practically to evaluate if there were differences between in this case, for example, chapter 2, with the pre, and at the end of the intervention, on the other studying chapter 4, for the both intervention, like the 50 grams of ground and the controlled period.
The collagen and the placebo period. Okay, and if we go to the results, that is in supplementary table 3 on page 50. Yeah, you got it. Then what I found, I saw some striking things. I saw that the energy in the collagen group was approximately 20% lower than in the placebo group. Is that, am I seeing that right?
Yes.
Yes, and also fiber, I think it was, fiber also was quite different between the two groups. Do you have an explanation for that?
Yeah, this is a good question. Well, we don't have an explanation because practically what we take care of this is that, for example, we have the participants and we go for both questionnaires simultaneously, and we check if they were doing or they answered good, because probably it is sometimes difficult to recall for 1 month, but at least we wanted to be sure if it was the real answer. Yeah. So the indication that I can say, like probably for them was difficult to recall, to have an exact consumption.
Yeah, so you only checked the difference between the start and the end, if whether there were differences between the two groups. So there was a difference in cholesterol.
Yeah.
But you also
for that, I remember that for some people, they consume less fish and they change it to meat. I would say that it was the difference in cholesterol.
Okay, that's interesting. So, but you do not know why the one group ate so much more than the other group?
No, this is one of the limitations of using this food frequency questionnaire. Okay,
thank you. Then my next question is on chapter 4. And I found that a difficult chapter, I have to say. So what did this study bring you? What did you expect to find? And
Yeah, actually, this is a good question because, as I mentioned before, I was struggling a little bit to give the clinical relevance in the results of the collagen hydrolysate regarding the glycemic variability. Yeah. So when I was looking for the information in non-diabetes, it was quite limited. So in this case, we wanted to see if obviously if this glycemic variability has association with fructosamine markers that was that we were able to measure. We couldn't measure HbA1c because we need the whole blood for that, and obviously we didn't have for all the studies. So at least we measure from one that is fructosamine that also correlates nicely with HbA1c. So it was to see if at least to have an idea if these parameters can have a clinical relevance in this population, because there is a huge difference between no diabetes and also diabetes in regards to glucose fluctuation.
Okay. And am I right that it was more or less a convenience sample that you used for this study? So that these studies were already done, and then you thought, well, maybe we can get something more out of this?
Yes,
is that right?
It was more like to answer a doubt, a question.
Okay, and in table 1 on page 93, you stratified for fasting glucose. And I think, well, there is a reason for doing that, of course, but you did not use that anymore in your model. Did you consider using that in your model, or?
No, this is a good question, but I think that what we wanted to see is, in general, all the population without diabetes. If we use it in the model, we could flat even more the results. So in this case, this population is also in the higher risk for cardiovascular diseases. So you can see also, for example, in the study, 4 or 3, I don't remember exactly, but it's with the almond study that included people with pre-diabetes. It was study 3. While, for example, in the study 2, they include people with obesity, with abdominal obesity. So we are aware that they are metabolically different, but in overall, these people are the population that we wanted to analyze, that it was with an increased risk of cardiovascular disease.
Yeah, but so you had people with normal fasting glucose and impaired fasting glucose, and did you expect to find that they would respond differently to?
Yes, this was more to show extra information, because, as I said, while looking for the literature, sometimes I saw something, I was like, okay, why didn't just split the result that I can have a better overview of what is going on? Mm-hmm. I also did analysis in these populations, but it's less powered, and it didn't add more information. That's why we didn't include in the paper, but the analysis also were performed.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much for the questions. I give the word back to the pro-rector.
Thank you very much. Then the opposition will be continued now by Professor Skirk online. Professor Skirk is Professor of Nutritional Medicine at the Technical University of Munich in Germany, and I'd like to thank him that he joins us, hopefully with a good Wi-Fi connection, I would say, here in Maastricht. And I'd like to give him the word. Professor Skirk.
Thank you, Mr. Pro-Rector. Hello, Mr. Candidate, and greetings from Freising, which you know. Can you hear me well? Okay, I guess so. First, again, let me thank for the invitation to join this defense, which I appreciate very much. And thank you and congratulations for the thesis you sent me, which I also extend to the supervisors, which gave you the opportunity to perform this nice work. As you might know, I'm also in the field of clinical studies involved a lot. And this is the reason why I apologize that I'm not there in person, as it was in competition with our own studies. But now let's come to your work in the end. And let me start with chapter 5, where you use the almonds. Can you just briefly outline why you used almonds for your study?
Yeah, thank you very much, Aristide Ponen. Thank you for the compliments and the question. So, as I also mentioned, for example, in the in the general introduction, it has been proved in several studies, in the longitudinal studies, the possible effects of these nuts in cardiovascular disease. And it has been now replicated in clinical studies. But also, it's worth it to know what is the role of every single nut. If they can confer, for example, better benefits, the same benefits, or no benefit. In this case, as I also mentioned, for example, you could see in the presentation, they can confer even different nutrients between the nuts. In this case, this has like a different nutrient composition that can be possibly translated to different outcomes at the end.
Which nutrients do you think of in the end, practice? So what is maybe affecting or not affecting your outcome?
For example, in here, we have a higher vitamin E, so antioxidant, that probably can reduce inflammatory markers. We also have a higher protein with arginine that can increase the oxynutrient, and therefore having a better the endothelial function. We also have potassium that we know that can reduce blood pressure. They have also is a little bit richer in monosaturated fatty acids compared to other nuts that can also improve our dietary intake in this regard, because as we know that sometimes we are not aware of that we need this kind of healthy fatty acids in our diet, and there is not too many foods that sometimes we just include it in our diet. So this is also a nice way to consume it in an easy way.
Okay, but I'm missing one ingredient which I was working on the last month, which could affect the glycemic response potentially. Do you know what I mean?
Acrylamide?
No, I think of fibers. Was it rich in fiber of your product?
Also richer in fiber compared to the other nuts. So this can also have because actually this study, the primary outcome was on glucose metabolism. In this paper, we showed the secondary outcomes in the cardiovascular health.
Yeah, and can you speculate a little bit on the mechanism of fibers on the glycemic response?
In this case, we did observe the different outcomes. We did observe that the 50 grams of almond consumption had a higher calorie intake that was translated with a higher BMI. We did not observe changes in for example, the continued glucose monitor measurement in glucose concentration, but we did observe an increase in insulin resistance for the clamp. That might be because in this case, compared to the nuts study, the participant ingested most of the time these almonds during the evening. And as you can also see in the general discussion of my thesis, there were also two studies that they recommended or they instructed the participants to consume these nuts during the evening, having no significant or no effect, or even they were gaining weight. It was not significant, but might be due to the length of the study that was shorter. So that's why we had light that now we also have to give better recommendations when to eat this kind of food that are very calorie density.
So what would you in practice recommend to eat it with the meals?
Actually, there is another study in the pre-diabetes where they consume 60 grams of almonds, 20 every main meal, and they had the opposite results. But also the protein ingestion in the pre-meals have shown also, for example, in glucose metabolism. So it's a good way to consume it in between, because you also can have the beneficial effect of satiety.
Okay, but again, to come back, it's just a speculation. What would you expect if you ingest more fibers? So this is a hot topic, to increase fiber intake. I think it's in the Netherlands, it's pretty similar that we eat too little amount of fibers. And if you now increase the fiber intake with almonds and nuts and other stuff, what is the effect you would expect fibers do in the nutrition?
Yeah, so there are several potential mechanisms that the fiber can improve health. One of them is also through the microbiota. I'm not a very expert on that field, but I know that can modulate for a healthier microbiota composition and also have beneficial effects on health. Another one is to reduce the glycemic index of the food and also to modulate gut hormones to increase satiety. So there are several mechanisms that we can benefit from the almond consumption in pre-meals.
Yeah, very good. So that was what I was expecting to have the effect on the glycemic index, which affects the glycemic excursion post ingestion of that. Do you have any other idea what can modulate the glycemic response after a meal?
Yes, of course. Because I was also working in another project that it was a potato study, I also found that, for example, when you compare or you add on your diet only potatoes, you're going to have probably an increase of glucose concentration similar to an OGTT due to use of the carbohydrates. Probably it's a bit smaller because of the small amount of fiber. But if you consume other kind of meals, for example, proteins, lipids, you're also going to delay the gastric emptiness. And also you're going to modulate other hormones that is going to delay also the gastric emptiness and therefore, obviously, for obvious reason, the glycemic index of the food. Plus, if you have fiber, if you have other kind of components, everything is going to have an impact also in the gastric emptiness and the gut hormones.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. I think these were my questions, and I would like to hand over to Mr. Prorector again.
Thank you very much. Right on time. Very good. Then the opposition will be continued by Dr. Huben. He was also a member of your assessment committee, and he is involved in microvascular dysfunction in cardiometabolic diseases, and I'd like to give him the word.
Thank you very much. Dear candidate, I also would like to congratulate you with your thesis, which is a very nice set of clinical studies in order to trying to look for dietary strategies. And what I really would like to stress is that it's very important to do these kind of studies from a translational point of view. And these are very difficult to perform. So for that, I would really like to congratulate you because getting all these participants and having them motivated and having them being compliant, stuff like that, is it's not an easy task. And with that, I also like to congratulate the promotion team. Okay, I looked at these different studies you performed, and I would like to have a question on the combination of the several chapters. So you present intervention types in chapters 2 and 3, chapter 5 and chapter 6. But you perform that in different types of populations, so to say. So in some you have chosen for overweight to obese participants, and then others with pre-diabetes. And can you explain a little bit how you came to these populations and why you made these specific choices in the different chapters?
Yeah. Esteemed opponent, thank you very much for your nice word and your question. So practically, as the thesis called, is just in general, is people with a higher risk of cardiovascular, cardiometabolic diseases. So we have several studies with different populations. One of them with prediabetes, the other ones with overweight or obesity between 40 and 75 years old, and the other ones with 60 to 70 years old. So, for example, it did not study the primary outcome was to measure cerebral blood flow. So cerebral blood flow is decreasing during the age. It's markedly decreasing during the age. So I think that they wanted, because I was not part of obviously the first manuscript, but probably they wanted to see a smaller gap in age, because this cerebral flow can be influenced markedly by the age. For the other ones, we want to capture at least when the people can start developing or have higher risk to develop this cardiovascular disease or diabetes or other metabolic diseases. So obviously, the older the people have also the higher chances to develop, but still we wanted to have a nice gap in those.
Yeah, yeah, because well, I mean, we do similar types of interventions and with a little different focus, and we have the same problem, so to say. Because if you make a random selection of people with overweight or obesity, you will see that, and you can see it also from the patient characteristics, that a part of them are healthy. Healthy in the sense of normal blood pressure, normal glucose metabolism. So if you were able to redo this PhD trajectory, looking back, would you have chosen other populations or more specific inclusion criteria?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think that this is a very valid question, because even BMI is not a very good markers, because can be people with about 25 BMI that might be just because of the muscle instead of the fat composition. So it could be a good tool to have these people with higher risk, like abdominal measurement. It would be something that we can consider for later, at least to really be sure, or to be more sure that we are included these people with more disturbed cardiometabolic parameters. Because as you said, like sometimes we can find like very healthy people that might be that there is no gap to see any improvement with the interventions.
Yeah. So yeah, so possibly that may be one of the problems, that part of your study population was healthy, and then there is not that much to gain with a certain type of intervention. Another approach or explanation could be, how about the dosage of the intervention that you do? So for chapters 2 and 3, you have a specific component that you add, and which is, of course, different with chapter 5, in which you give almonds as an additional dietary intervention. But how about the dosage? I mean, is that perhaps too low to have an effect if you look? So these are considered as supplements, dietary supplements, or should we move in research more to pharmacological dosages? Yeah,
regarding the chapter 2 and 3, that is from the same clinical trial, we also argued that it might be that, for example, the glucose metabolism, we could miss the 9th effects because of the lifespan in the blood of these amino acids and the possible effects. So could be that it would be recommended to ingest it twice per day, one in the morning, one before the dinner. Also, it is proof that the protein intake, the amount also will have higher impact or higher insulinotropic effects with higher amounts of protein. But at least we use 10 grams. That has been done a meta-analysis recommendation for the minimum amounts of collagen hydrolysate to consume it to have a beneficial effect. For the other studies, also, they were considered meta-analysis to have the most beneficial effects with the minimum amount of almonds and nuts with that. Obviously, it also lowered the amounts of nuts. I can say, for example, in LDL, we found a decrease of approximately 0.3 millimoles per liter, while, for example, 48 had a decrease of lower decrease. So even 35 grams have like a half of the decrease of LDL that we have. But because we also have to consider the 0.3.5 millimoles per deciliter might be translated to 6%, to more than 6% of benefits to reduce cardiovascular diseases. So the other one that it was kind of the half, we can say that it's just 3%. So in this case, now we can argue, okay, it was significant, but it is really, clinical relevant or not? Because we also are talking about food that is probably is not going to have the same effect of the medication. So, but we say that for nuts, we have this 5% just adding one food product in the diet. I think it's very worth it to do this kind of research.
Okay. Thank you. I think we are out of time for this. Thank you for your answers, and I give the word back to the program.
Indeed, the time is over, and we have to proceed to the last opponent, which is Professor Saverberg. He is the chair of the Department of Academic Education in Movement, if I pronounce it correctly, and I would like to also give him the opportunity to discuss with you.
Thank you, Mr. Pro-Rector. Dear candidates, it has already been several times mentioned that you did a very good job, and I would like to extend my compliments to this and congratulate you with the nice work, and also extend my congratulations to your support team. I would like to have a look with you at physical activity. You measured physical activity in chapter 2 and chapter 5, and I think that could be a wise thing to do, since it has been several times shown that physical activity has an effect on metabolism, so that might interact with your nutritional interventions. But at the same time, I have the feeling that you treat physical activity not very respectfully. So I have a number of questions for you about physical activity and how you dealt with it in this study. So my first question would be, if you choose in chapter 2 and chapter 5 to measure physical activity for 2 or 3 days. Why did you decide to measure it for 2 or 3 days? Or would there have been other options? What were your criteria for this choice?
Highly esteemed opponent, thank you very much for the compliment and the question. The decision of using the 3 days is to match, for example, in the collagen hydrolysate with the same days of the glucose monitor. So practically, we can't argue that might be that the physical activity did not have an effect or significant effect in this parameter that we were measuring. So basically, it's just that because we could have even more information, we have more extra days, but at least we wanted to match these days with the continued glucose monitor days too.
That is the glucose monitoring, but then what you do is you measure the physical activity, then you express it as the duration during a day, the average day, in several levels of physical activity, so low, medium, moderate figures, and you can achieve this total amount of moderate physical activity in different ways, so different patterns over the day. If indeed you think that physical activity is an important factor, did you consider to take that as a covariate in a statistical analysis?
Thank you for the question. Actually, it was one of the reasons what we measured the physical activity. In this case, well, if we would be significant, we would use it as a covariant. But as I said, for example, in the almond study that it was significant, I also had the task to say that it was clinical relevance. If we can change this parameter significantly, as we didn't see it, that's why we didn't put it in the equation in the analysis. Also, I can argue that one of the limitations of the physical activity that we measure is that we didn't see if, for example, the length of the, let's say, moderate physical activity, if it is consecutively or just the seconds that the participants went up, going up to the stairs, or were really physical activity like riding a bicycle or something like that, that can be more beneficial, like at least putting this physical activity in 10 minutes. That will have a better overview of the physical activity. We didn't measure also the time that we're standing or sitting, that we could do it, but also we didn't want to overwhelm the story with extra analysis for that. So at least for us, we use it as a covariant, but as I didn't see...
You had this data, you used the mocks, is that...
You can extract this data, but we didn't in this case.
And so why didn't you choose to extract it? Well, you can do half an hour of moderate physical activity early in the morning and sit for the rest of the day, or...
To be honest, as many jobs, you have deadlines. So sometimes you have deadlines. So sometimes you have to prioritize things. In this case, as we use as a covariance, and at least we didn't see it in the big picture changes that can probably have a modification in our results. We didn't go further. But yes, with more time, I think that I would have liked to do it, like to take in consideration all these extra parameters.
So you make some choices, some priorities. Then don't you think that, well, physical activity has an effect on metabolism?
Of course.
That this interaction is very important to measure?
Yes, but yeah, just I can say that, as I said, it's just the big picture that we showed in this case.
Okay. Thank you so far. Then in chapter 5, you had a very longitudinal study, 5 months, and 2 months of washout, and then again 5 months. So you measure in different seasons, and people's physical activity changes over the seasons. So did you take this into account, this seasonal effect of physical activity?
Yeah, I mean, usually with the randomization, you're going to have probably the same participants having the same, how can I say, like the same period of intervention. So let's say that probably 3 participants also started in the summer and finished probably before summer, and therefore it's going to contrast these effects. So that is what we can say, because it's not possible to have all of them started at once due to the personnel, the staff, and also the facilities, and also I
think that's a very elegant solution, that you have a control and intervention. Participants starting at the same moment. Why didn't you do the physical activity measurement in chapter 3 and chapter 4, chapter 6? I think for cognition, for example, it has been shown that physical activity has an effect on cognition.
In chapter 3, well, it's from the same study of the chapter 2. So in that one, we just in the discussion, we argued that there was not changes. In the other one, chapter 4? No,
chapter 4, I understand.
Chapter 4 we have it?
Well, maybe I should rephrase my question. Yeah. I understand that you use data from other studies, but do you think that physical activity might have an effect on the variability that you...
Of course. I mean, we know that physical activity can increase GLUT4 in the muscle, and therefore, like having the better insulin sensitivity, and therefore lower the glycemic variability.
I think you finished your answer completely, yes?
Yes.
Then I think we conclude. Dear Mr. Candidate, dear Mr. Marco Chavez Alfaro, the time appointed for defending your thesis has now officially passed. The degree committee will now withdraw to discuss not only the quality of the thesis, which has already been approved, but the quality of your presentation and the quality in which you have defended your thesis this afternoon. And I request that you and your company await the results of our deliberations and the return to the aula. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The PhD defense has now ended. The degree committee will debate the candidate's performance behind closed doors. This process usually takes about 10 minutes.
Southside, 7 miles in my rearview mirror. I know what it felt like. My goals only getting clearer. East side to the west side. No place like home. If it's questions that you've got, go the extra mile and die. The line, I know you know that I can't read your mind. Years can't fly by now, don't waste all your time. Cause I'll go the extra mile. Long road to the south side, 7 miles in my rearview mirror. I know what it felt like. My goals only getting clearer. East side to the west side. No place like home. If it's questions that you've got, go the extra mile and die. On the dash, got my laces tied. Long road, I don't waste no time. Break rules because fate decides. With the team and we chase the light. I make a move, fall down, shake it off. I hate to lose, bad branch, break it off. No room for negativity, praise and love. Prepare for deep part cause we're taking off. Take the mileage, traveling so far from home. Gathering knowledge, other connections. I put the time in to get everything I ever hoped for. It's a challenge and we all in. It's a better future that we go for. And even though these nights seem long, I know that I am never on my own. Know you won the battle once you've grown. Southside, 7 miles in my rearview mirror. I know what it felt like. My goals only getting clearer. East side to the west side. No place like home. If it's questions that you've got, go the extra mile and die. Long road to the south side, 10 miles in my rearview mirror. I know what it felt like. My goals only getting clearer. East side to the west side. No place like home. If it's questions that you've got, go the extra mile and die. Years can't fly by now, don't waste all your time. Cause I'll go the extra mile.
Mine? Let's do this.
Dear Mr. Marco Chavez Alfaro, the degree committee here present has assessed not so much the quality of your thesis, but particularly the way you have defended your thesis, but also taken into consideration your presentation. In view of its positive verdict and taking into account your previous qualification, the degree committee has decided to grant you officially the degree of doctor. Professor Plat is authorized to confer this academic distinction in accordance with Dutch university customs, and therefore I invite your supervisor now to take the floor officially.
All right, please.
Do you promise to work in accordance with the principles of scientific integrity at all times, to be careful and honest, transparent, independent and responsible?
I do promise.
By the authority vested in us by law and in conformity with the decision of the committee here present, I hereby confer upon you, Marco Antonio Chavez Alfaro, the degree of doctor and grant you all rights attached by custom and law. As evidence of this, I now present you with the degree of certificate signed by the rector, the secretary and the other members of the committee and affixed with the official seal of the university.
I give the word to the first promoter, Professor Flat, to speak out the laudatio.
Thank you, Mr. Prorector. Dear Dr. Chavez Alfaro, dear Marco, it is my privilege as your first promoter to hand you the bill, which I just did, and of course to be the first to congratulate you officially. But of course you know that these congratulations are also on behalf of your other promoter, Ronald, sitting here beside me. We really did it as a team, but today you are the shining star. And of course, we also congratulate you with this achievement. We congratulate your family and friends. Also, a lot of them will probably be watching the live stream. And, well, I think they will all be proud what you did today. Marco, you know, this is the moment to look back in time a little bit and to see how it all started. And you came, we just discussed it when we were walking to this room as well. You came to Mexico, from Mexico to Europe in 2017 to study nutrition and biomedicine in Munich. And as part of that study, you did an internship here in Maastricht in another department, Department of Human Biology. And I think you liked it here in Maastricht, in the Netherlands, because you decided to apply for a PhD position in Maastricht, this time in our department, Nutrition and Movement Sciences. So you started your project, your PhD project, late in 2020, and it has already been mentioned directly after the start, the COVID period started and the COVID-19 pandemic, and it's not the best time to start your studies. And finding volunteers was difficult, and we were certainly restricted in the possibilities to do research, especially in the volunteers that you needed in your studies, the ones with overweight and obesity, because we all know they were particularly at risk to develop all the symptoms. So it wasn't easy, but you were extremely motivated, and you didn't even start one study, but you decided to start two studies at the same time in these difficult conditions. And indeed, because we didn't discuss it today, two projects, because beside the project with the collagen hydrolysates that we discussed today, you also started working on another project that's still ongoing. It was called the LOPO Cardio trial, in which we worked on evaluating the health effects of a diet rich in potatoes as compared to a diet rich in pasta and rice. This study was also certainly a challenge because it was also difficult to find the subjects, but also because it has a very long intervention duration of 3 months. And let's be honest, eating potatoes for 3 months, well, it can be a bit boring. But you really were able to keep the participants motivated and to complete these difficult intervention. And you're now leaving the group. The study is still ongoing, but we promise you to continue and to complete the study, and of course to keep you involved in all the next steps that will come. In the studies that were described in your thesis, you focused on the protein hydrolysate. You showed it and discussed it this day. And for this, you had to work with the continuous glucose monitors. And well, you really developed yourself like a kind of expert in this topic because you introduced to me and to Ronald a new freeware package in R. It's called Igloo. And we were not aware of it. It was certainly your personal finding, this program. And that enabled you not only to calculate the incremental area under the curve and areas, but also additional glycemic variability parameters. And you were really eager to understand it and to work with these bigger data sets. And it was not only this data, but also the 24-hour measurements of blood pressure and physical activity, all the big data sets. You really liked working with it, and the data was certainly in good hands. And although the study looking at the effects of collagen hydrolysate had a somewhat disappointing outcome, let's be honest, we hypothesized differently. But despite that, your abstract was selected for the Foppert and Hoare Young Investigator Award, and you defended it there very well. You got the second prize, and that was very well deserved. And I'm not only proud of that prize, but also that you published that paper in a very good journal, Clinical Nutrition, with an impact factor of 6.6. And that indicates that quality is still recognized. So even despite the fact that the study outcome was negative, you can win prizes and publish in good journals. In your studies, there were many interns that helped you. You had support from visiting students from many different nationalities, from Greece, France, Mexico, the Netherlands, and many more. And it was always great to see you interact with them. And I think you were a good mentor for them in learning how to do human nutrition intervention studies. It's evident that nutrition research, well, it's a lot of work, and it has already been mentioned. It's a lot of hands-on work, doing all the measurements, finding the participants, long test days, start early, and just keep going till the end of the day is there, and you did all the work. And but you and your students, you also always had a good time, and I think there was a lot of laughing involved as well. And I heard you laughing a lot. That's the one. Typical laugh. We will definitely miss that one. We also have to talk briefly about football, your biggest passion. And not too long, because you had the wrong sticker on your laptop. You know it. It's the wrong team, and so we will keep it short. And moreover, Ronald and I, we were also wondering how healthy soccer actually is, because if we saw you crawling through the corridors on Monday morning, we were definitely worried. But well, you certainly enjoyed it, and that's most important. Now the question is, what next? We understand that you are actively looking for a new job, and whatever that will be, we are convinced that you will find a great position somewhere, because you are equipped with the right set of characteristics. You're enthusiastic, eager to learn, talented, hardworking, and last but not least, extremely social and a real team player. And that's, well, definitely a characteristic that will give you a good position somewhere. Finally, we would like to thank, and that's certainly also on behalf of Ronald, the members of the reading committee, especially the members from outside university, Professor Ingeborg Brouwer, coming all the way from Amsterdam, and Professor Thomas Skirk, joining online from Munich University in Germany, to contribute to this ceremony. And we also want to thank the company Rousselot, who funded the study on the protein hydrolysates and looking at the effects of the glucose metabolism. Marco, Ronald and I, we want to thank you for the great time. It was really a pleasure to have you in our group, not only as a PhD student, but especially as a person. I'm very happy that we got to know each other. Wish you and your family all the best in your scientific careers, and I hope you will enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you. Now I give the word back to the prorector.
Well, dear Dr. Chavez Alfaro, how does that feel?
Wow, I don't know how to describe it.
Very good. I would also like to congratulate you on behalf of Maastricht University from our board of directors. You did a great job. We really enjoyed your presentation, and we were unanimous in our decision that you did a very great defense.
Thank you.
In my congratulations, of course, I also go to the promotion team who guided you, and they already give in their laudatio, they expressed already their pleasure that you reached this very good, positive decision today. I also would like to thank the members of the Corona, who indeed was already mentioned before, who also took the time to come here, ask questions, although they have just 9 minutes. It takes more than 9 minutes to make these questions here available. In my congratulations also goes to your family. I think some of your family, or most of your family, is in Guadalajara, in Jalisco, in Mexico, and they are online now. The camera is over there, so if you look at them, the camera will notice that, and it will be online available by Facebook all the way to Mexico. I also would like to mention the family here, your Dutch part of the coming family. Let's express it in a little scareful way. A great job, and also my compliments. And by saying this, I think we're going to conclude this, and for the conclusion I use my hammer, which I have here, and I said that this ceremony is officially closed, and how are we going to proceed? I understand you have decided that we're not going to have a reception here, but we go to Que Paso.
Que pasa? Yes, so it's just in front.
Yes.
At 5:45, everybody can enter. So feel free to drink whatever you want. And
So the audience, they don't have to wait for us, because we have to do two things. First of all, we're going to make a picture here in the aula with Professor Skirk on the big screen.